This is the country of Lesotho. It defies most people's expectations of what Africa is. It is neither hot and arid nor humid and tropical, but mountainous and often bone-chillingly cold. A scenic land of tall mountains and narrow valleys. Lesotho has the highest base elevation of any nation in the world, meaning that the country lies entirely above 1,000 meters in elevation, and most of it around 1,800 meters. Its highest peak is 3,482 meters above the sea level. With major mountain ranges within its borders, Lesotho owes its long history of political independence to these surroundings that have protected it, which have also led to the nation's peculiar position, being nestled completely within the boundaries of Republic of South Africa, making it the largest sovereign enclave in the world. Its capital, Maseru, is roughly 1,000 kilometers away from Cape Town and 400 kilometers away from Pretoria, while the nearest foreign country is Eswatini, previously known as Swaziland, roughly 420 kilometers away. There are only two other national enclaves in the world, meaning countries within countries. Those would be Vatican State in Rome and San Marino, also situated in Italy. However, both of those states pale in comparison to Lesotho when it comes to their territorial size and population. 2,142,000 is more comparable to the countries like North Macedonia, Slovenia, or Botswana. While in terms of land area, Lesotho is just a little smaller than the country of Belgium and larger than Armenia, meaning that in terms of size and population, Lesotho is not a microstate and very much a legitimate country.
So how did the Kingdom of the Sky come to be? Why is it not a part of South Africa? And what is life like in this peculiar country?
The story of Lesotho officially begins with its first monarch, Maseru, a man who formed his own clan and became a chief around 1804. He and his followers settled the northern parts of Lesotho between 1820 and 1823. This was a very turbulent time for ethnic African communities, as the region was going through what was known as the Mafekane, a period of widespread chaos and warfare. As King Shaka created the militaristic Zulu kingdom, his forces caused a wave of warfare and disruption in the region, displacing many tribes, forcing them to move, leading to further widespread warfare and the consolidation and creation of new tribes, such as the Soto people, who were united by Maseru in 1820.
In the coming years, the nationhood of the country was beginning to establish as the Sotho people defended the lands they had settled from the incursions of various British and Dutch colonists who were trying to settle there themselves.
This culminated in the Free State Basotho Wars between Soto and the Orange Free State, which was an independent Boer sovereign republic.
Ultimately, the Basotho were not able to hold off the Boers. Their territory was overrun. The Orange Free State forces had achieved great military success, and Maseru's only hope was to ask the British for help.
On 12th of March 1868, the British Parliament declared Basotho Kingdom a British protectorate. The Orange Free State was forced to discontinue the war, otherwise it would risk confronting the British.
Maseru was able to save his kingdom from being overrun. He died 2 years later in 1870. The territory remained essentially autonomous in the early years of colonial rule, with traditional Basotho chiefs wielding effective power as they always had.
In 1871, Britain handed over the control to the Cape Colony, otherwise known as Cape of Good Hope, and in late 1870s, Cape authorities attempted to consolidate their power over the region and enforce their laws.
Basotholand started chafing under the new restrictions and attempts to reduce the authority of its chiefs. Matters came to a head in 1879 when a part of Basotholand was reserved for the white settlement, and the Basotho natives were required to give up their rights to firearms. Within months, most Basotho chiefs were in open rebellion, and the colonial Cape forces suffered heavy casualties.
As the Basotho had obtained firearms from the Orange Free State and enjoyed a natural defensive advantage in the country's mountainous terrain, a peace treaty was signed with Basotho chiefs in 1881. The land remained in Basotho hands, and the nation held onto its unrestricted access to firearms.
And ultimately, the Cape Colony could not force its dominion over the Basotho, who were more than willing to defend and protect the rule of its tribal chiefs. So in 1884, the Cape Colony renounced its claim, and the territory became a crown colony by the name of Basotholand.
Since it was able to leave the Cape Colony, it did not have the option of becoming a part of the Union of South Africa, which was the precursor to the nation of South Africa. With the unification of the Cape Colony, the Natal Colony, the Transvaal, and the Orange River Colony, Basotholand was left out, and so its status would remain unchanged for quite some time until it gained its independence from Britain and became the Kingdom of Lesotho in 1966.
At that point, South Africa had implemented full-blown apartheid, and Lesotho, with its majority native African population, couldn't possibly join it. Apartheid was characterized by an authoritarian political culture based on white supremacy, which ensured that South Africa was dominated politically socially, and economically by the nation's minority white population. According to this system of social stratification, white citizens had the highest status, followed by Asians and coloureds, and then black Africans.
Lesotho of course opposed apartheid from the beginning, and many political refugees ended up finding asylum there until the abolition of the apartheid in the mid-90s. Today, the Basotho still form the overwhelming majority of the country's population. Internally, divisions between different chiefdoms have caused much political tension and riots in the country, but a sense of Sotho nationhood and cultural unity remains strong.
One of the biggest challenges faced by the country today being Lesotho's population is growing at a slower rate than that of most African countries, even though the country's birth rate is slightly above the world average. The limiting factor being the high prevalence of AIDS, HIV, meaning that Lesotho's population is relatively young, with the majority of the population below age 29. And life expectancy is also below the average for Africa, and is ranked as one of the lowest in the world, with the average being just around 55 years.
This is something that is somewhat difficult for the nation to fix, as Lesotho is a very poor country with water and its labour force really being the main driving forces of its economy, while being entirely reliant on its relationship with South Africa. As much as half the male adult population worked on a temporary basis in South Africa in the early 20th century, predominantly in its gold mines, but also other economic sectors. So it wasn't long ago that Lesotho had the distinction of having a higher proportion of its labour force temporarily employed outside its borders than any other country in the world. It was normal for any adult to spend at least a year or two in South African mines, like a passage to adulthood.
And so Lesotho served as a labour reserve for South Africa's mining industries for more than a century, driving Lesotho's economy. Until the 1950s, black Africans from Lesotho were treated with South Africans just like other South African blacks.
This was because in 1911, when the Union of South Africa was established, a provision was made for the future incorporation of the High Commission territories.
As a result, the South African government tended to treat the nationals of these countries similarly to its own natives. It was not until some point in the 1950s that it finally became clear that Basutoland and the two other former High Commission territories would not be incorporated into South Africa, and South Africa began imposing and progressively tightening border controls.
However, the border is one of the kind that can never be sealed. In the western lowlands, it is a river that for much of the year can be walked through. Much of the rest of it is in mountainous territory that would be impractical to fence effectively. Crossing the border and evading controls has always been possible. Once in South Africa, a person from Lesotho can seek employment or self-employment in the large informal sector with relatively little fear of detection and not much risk. Although both sides have rejected political unifying Lesotho with South Africa, it appears that in practice both governments have decided there's no point in trying to prevent this movement. Seeing as it has always been easy to move between the countries, educated and entrepreneurial people always choose to leave, meaning the country has difficulty establishing a productive labour force. And while the average wage in South Africa is worth about $1,440 a month, and the average in Lesotho is $780, this trend is likely to continue well into the future.
Since the 1990s, Lesotho has transformed itself into being another kind of reserve for South Africa, with the signing of the 1986 treaty to move forward with the Lesotho Highlands water project.
Lesotho became the first ever water exporting country in the world. Lesotho Highlands water project is an ongoing water supply project with hydropower component. It comprises a system of several large dams and tunnels throughout Lesotho and delivers water to the Wall River system in South Africa. It is Africa's largest water transfer scheme. The purpose of the project is to provide Lesotho with a source of revenue in exchange for the provision of water to South Africa, as well as generate hydroelectricity for Lesotho.
Supporters of the water project describe it as a mutually beneficial agreement. Lesotho has abundant water, while South Africa faces severe water shortage. The idea of Lesotho being abundant in water is something that anchors its national identity, and at the same time is commodified and sold. In a way, Lesotho's water of abundance is a critical conceptual vehicle for linking water commodification to its national image and independence.
For if Lesotho did not have this one crucial resource, then the basis for its nationhood would be greatly diminished and would have little to no leverage in any negotiations with South Africa, meaning it would always be completely at its mercy. In reality, however, water abundance is highly localized in Lesotho, with its extremely diverse topography leading to diverse rainfall patterns and a patchy geography of water. Water in Lesotho is localized temporally with high seasonality, meaning that while the country produces and exports huge amounts of water, its people are often left without it and are unable to attain it. The massive dam reservoirs in the country seem to proclaim water abundance by their very existence, but people living beside them lack well-maintained water taps or any form of irrigation and are prohibited from extracting water from the reservoirs for their own use. The truth is that corruption likely leads to Basotho seeing little benefit from their most abundant resource. It would be unfair, however, to say that water is the only resource Lesotho has. In the northwest of the country, located in the Maluti Mountains, you'll find the world's highest diamond mine. The Letseng mine is famous for the size and quality of the diamonds it produces and has the highest average selling price per piece in the world. It's special because it produces massive diamonds, sometimes the size of multiple golf balls. But while the physical size of the diamonds found is spectacular, the amount of excavation required for the extraction has historically made mining not highly profitable. And overall, the quantity of diamonds being extracted in Letseng is very low compared to more profitable mines. But not all of Lesotho is just mountains, water reservoirs, mines and pasture land. The largest city, Maseru, was established as a police camp that evolved after the Free State Basotho War and was assigned as the capital after the country became a British protectorate in 1869. When the country achieved independence in 1966, Maseru retained its status as capital. The latest 2016 census lists the city's population at 330,000, or around a tenth of the entire population of the country, and half of the total urban population in the nation. Urban life is a blend of traditional and Western culture. Considering the history and its relationship to South Africa, it is not surprising that the largest city of the country has evolved right on the border with it, where the edge of the city is defined by the Mohakane River, where South Africa begins, thereby facilitating labor exchange and migration between the two nations.
The contradictions created by Lesotho's lack of economic independence in the face of political independence are reflected in the cultural life of the country. Lesotho combines modern and traditional ways, providing continuity in a society that is disrupted by a system of migratory labor. Traditional authority is still exercised through a system of chieftaincy, extending from the kings through the chiefs to the village level.
Despite increasing urbanization and the growth of modern institutions and bureaucracy, many Sotho are still interested in building a rural homestead and perpetuating traditional institutions. They also remain loyal to the chieftaincy system. Circumcision forms an integral part of the initiation ceremonies that train boys to take their place as full members of the family, clan, and nation, which are the pillars holding up society. Many young boys spend a large part of their lives as herdsmen, while women and young girls do much of the hard work in the fields. Because of the sharp variation in climate, both men and women wear the traditional Basotho blankets, one of the most distinguishing traits of the Basotho. While economically the near future of Lesotho is not looking very bright, it is certainly a place of great beauty and ethnic traditions that I hope to visit one day. This is a 3D terrain map of Lesotho that I rendered for this video. If you would like to download it for your wallpaper or print it yourself, you can purchase it from geoperspective.org, where I sell many different maps that are ready for printing, or I can even print it for you.
If you prefer, you may also access the maps by joining me on Patreon. Now, guess the location where this footage was taken by leaving a comment for the algorithm.
Geoperspective out.